today I'm going to teach you how to dominate with this new control list from EYC. First, I'm going to be going over the deck list, explaining every single card and its reason in the deck, and then after that I'm going over every single meta relevant matchup and tell you how to beat every single one of them. So first I'm going to go row by row, card by card, and explaining the exact purpose of it in this deck. And first we have specifically this 60 HP Ralts, and the reason why we're playing this Ralts is because that memory skip attack does allow us to basically serve as that Morpeko from last format and make it so our opponent cannot just leave one lone basic in the active spot. Like if in an Arceus match or something, they can't just pile a ton of energies on one Arceus because we can just memory skip and make it so they can't attack with that one Pokemon. The only reason why you play the 70 HP Ralt is if you are afraid of Lost Zone Box. 70 HP one would give you a little more health, but we're not going to be dropping Kirlia in that matchup anyway, so we do have Kirlia in this deck just as a very powerful draw card. Our main winning condition involves getting all the way through the deck, so obviously it is very important to it's just very important to just use that refinement. Like even if they have Judge, we're going to be discarding cards, drawing cards, just very good. Playing two Yveltals mainly for Mew. There's Cryo Destruction to discard energies in play. Also has some utility against Lugia. Two Rotoms sort of as a new version of Snorlax. It is never going to be able to fill the shoes that Snorlax had. Snorlax was just much better, but it tries. Instant Charge allows us just to fill the hand and the turn. It's still quite good. We have two Mimikyus. It's basically the star of the show in most of our matchups. Dummy Doll makes it so it's immune to all attacks for a turn, so then we can just almost loop that for a very long time with Penny. So it's just a very devastating loop for most matchups. We're playing one Ursaluna V, it has a very large amount of health, very hard for most decks to one-shot. One Crabominable to give us a more proactive mill, also has a large amount of health. One Mawile, this is going to be very useful to lock decks in place that have useless Pokemon like Lumineon, Manaphy, Radiant Greninja, and play very few switching cards. We're playing one Manaphy to this goes hand in hand with the Mawile to force unwanted Pokemon onto our opponent's bench. We're playing one Regieleki to recover all resources. We can recover Pal Pads if we spend them in the early game. Recover Penny, just any sort of two Crushing Hammers, anything that we sort of need to recover. Regieleki is there for us. Shout out to Calyrex with that Shadow Mist attack helps us lock down that Mew matchup. It makes it so our opponent cannot drop any special energies down. One Pyukumuku, just a little extra to draw a card. It makes our level balls always live later on in the game. One Radiant Greninja to give us a little extra power draw. We're not always going to want all our energies. Some matchups Double Turbo will be useless, some Water will be useless. So we can get a little extra draw that way. One Miltank just for any matchup where our opponent, it just forces our opponent to always have a non-V attacker available. It's not terribly overwhelming into any one specific matchup, but it's just all around a pretty solid card. One Ditto basically serves as a second Mawile, second Regieleki, second Manaphy, but it just saves space basically. Three Penny, and it enables the main loop of our deck, allowing us to pick up that Mimikyu, go into another one, and be able to use that to basically grind our opponent down. Two Boss Sorters, just for a little Gust trapping with the Mawile. We can use it to buy time in the early game. One Yaocheer just to recover all our supporters. Also can put basic Pokemon back into the deck if we're trying to play around something like Echoing Horn. One Flannery serves as a little energy discard. Mainly we'll use it with Shadow Rider Calyrex in that Mew matchup. One Cyllene, just as a general all-purpose recovery card, can get all the resources in our deck. One Acerola, this is best used with the Manaphy. Since we only have one Manaphy, we can check our opponent's hand with Acerola's Premonition, and if they have a Radiant Greninja, Lumineon, just some bad Pokemon in their hand, we can force it onto the bench with that Manaphy and not just have the risk of just going in blind with Manaphy and just hoping for the best. One Peonia, because we play very few thick counts. We have a lot of thin counts of very important cards. We want to make sure that we don't prize those. One Colress as just a powerful draw supporter, and oftentimes we have specific cards that will not be useful in that certain matchup, so we can just loss on those cards pretty pain-free. One Zinnia as just a sort of different draw supporter. We don't really usually see Zinnia too often, but it does give us a little discard, and also our opponent will likely be trying to fill up their bench against us, if they want to try to play around Manaphy and just load their bench. Zinnia gives us a little extra push that way. This definitely could be a second Colress if you'd like. 4 Level Balls, 3 Nest Balls. The Level Ball gives us access to all of our little Pokemon like Mawile, Manaphy, Kirlia, Ralts. I think the only reason why we're not playing a 4th Nest Ball instead of fourth Level Ball over fourth Nest Ball is because not only can we find those Pokemon directly into hand and like discard them with Kirlia, it just gives us more access to our Kirlia, which is very important to our draw engine. 3 Pal Pad just to recover the penny. It gives us 9 pennies to use just so we can loop our opponent out. 2 Crushing Hammers, that's a little bit of energy disruption. It's pretty much a staple in control decks. 2 Trekking Shoes, that's a little bit of extra draw support to get into the game. 1 Hisuian Heavy Ball because we have lots of 1-of and 2 of Pokemon that can sometimes hide in the prize cards. 2 for our Seal Stones, just we don't have a VSR power, so it's an obvious choice when we play basic Pokemon V. 1 Pot Helmet, we like to stick this on Pokemon like Miltank to give us a little extra just tankiness. 2 Stormy Mountains, just so we have extra ways to find Rotom V on the very first turn. 4 Double Turbo Energies to attack with Miltank, to attack with Yveltal. Also helps pivot our Kirlias if our opponent tries to trap us in the active spot. 2 Psychics to attack with Calyrex and Mimikyu, 1 Water to attack with Crabominable and Manaphy, and 1 V-Guard to give a little extra tankiness to our V Pokemon. So now I'm going to be going over all of our matchups. The first deck I will be going over is the Gardevoir EX matchup. We're going to be trying to retreat lock with our Mawile, and this matchup can be a bit troublesome because as we've seen with towards second place list, they are playing Penny, and I've also seen some escape ropes on the rise with Alolan Vulpix as a big threat. So this is definitely sort of we might have to find an alternate win condition, at least with the current list. If our opponent is able to pick up that bad attacker, it's oftentimes hard to like reset and force them to bench it again. Like especially if they just load up their bench, might force something like Avery or Echoing Horn to come into the list. But as things stand right now, just going off of the list that had performed well previously. We're just going to, if they bench Lumineon, Manaphy, Radiant Greninja, we'll be gusting that up and then using Mawile's Tempting Trapped. And most of the time, they will not be having any ways to move it. And then if they're not going to make things easy for us and not bench any of those Pokemon, we can use Acerola's Premonition periodically, also like recover with Regieleki and just see if our opponent has any of those Pokemon in their hand, and swoop in with Manaphy or Ditto to force it onto their bench, then move into Mawile after that. Definitely, I am concerned about the future of this matchup. If cards like Penny and Escape Rope become mainstays in Gardevoir, but as of right now, Mawile is what we have to do to win. Up next, we have Miraidon, and it's sort of fitting that one of those boring decks in format has one of those vanilla graphics. And this matchup is really weird, because Miraidon's a very aggressive deck that can run you off the table very quickly, but they don't have any good answer to Mimikyu. And we can go with the 9 penny Mimikyu loop strategy. Just the issue is, like, even if we're using Jealous Eyes every single turn for 120 damage, they have like a ton of, like, they can just basically go into a Regieleki, sponge up a couple hits, retreat into another Regieleki, sponge up a couple hits, and they can just wait us out until we run out of resources. So I'm almost, I'd be intrigued to know what a smarter player like Sander Wojcik has in mind for this matchup. Like if a card like Misfortunes would be worth adding to like middle switching cards, and then go for a Mawile to win. I still think that's sort of unrealistic because they play so many basic energies. But the matchup definitely seems pretty challenging. Like they also have Echoing Horns that they can throw at us to break our Mimikyu lock and like roll boss and just things like that. Just seem very, very challenging. But yeah, this matchup just seems pretty tough. But I think with the Mimikyu loop, you definitely have a chance, but you probably have to play pretty perfectly. And now we have Lugia, which is a really odd matchup because Mawile Retreat Lock can be very effective if they overbench and bench the incorrect attackers like Radiant Serena, Lumineon, Dunsparce, things like that. But like a good player is probably just going to load their bench and not allow you to do that. So we kind of have to pivot to a Penny Loop win condition, like using the Mimikyu specifically because like Ursaluna is going to get one shot by a Tyranitar. Crabominable is going to get one shot. So we kind of have to rely on the Mimikyu loop, which I think like our plan A is going to use Mawile if they bench like that Lumineon, Radiant Serena, where it's going to gust it up, lock them down, and if they leave a bench spot open, I would definitely I would definitely try to use Acerola and Manaphy, and matchups like this definitely maybe want to experiment like an Avery Echoing Horn, or just like having Avery in the deck to force them to offload some of their bench Pokemon. It definitely is kind of awkward because you can't use Avery and Acerola in the same turn, so might not just be enough time for it in this matchup. One thing to look out for is even if we do trap something, one of the top 8 Lugia lists was rocking Thornton, which definitely does not bode too well. Like if we lock up that Lumineon on the active spot and we're feeling all good, then they Thornton it into a Tyranitar or something, then to ruin our day. So I just think that this matchup it's kind of hard to explain and just like put into a graphic that makes sense, because I feel like half the deck is as useful cards, I feel. But we also have Yveltal that can force resources. It's just kind of a matchup that you kind of have to feel your way through. Like if Mawile's not going to work, we kind of have to pivot to retreat locking. We have to pivot to something else. The good news in this matchup, we don't have to worry about rogue boss most of the time, so we don't necessarily need to have a empty bench to just start Mimikyu looping, which is definitely nice. But it's just really weird matchup where I don't think I can really like sufficiently explain it in like the words that I can put up here. But it's just you kind of have to be very flexible and adapt to how your opponent plays. And now we have our perhaps easiest matchup, and that's Mimimax. This one's very cut and dry. We just go in with that Shadow Mist, and they're a DTE Mew list. They're not like anything that they can do. If they manage to get down to managers early to try to get ahead, we can just use Yveltal and clear them all. We have Flannery, Crushing Hammers. This is just fairly basic matchup. The only thing that we will have to be careful of is if they just have like Cyllene Pal Pad and just start gusting our Kirlias over and over again, and we have to use DTEs to retreat. So definitely, I know it's kind of hard if we need our Kirlias to start drawing and getting into the game, but almost like benching Kirlias sort of feels it feels counterproductive sometimes. Like it just ends up hindering us later. But between Cyllene, Forest Seal, we have plenty of ways to just find and reuse our double turbos over and over again. Most of the time we can outlast Mew. We're not playing Pidgeot in this list, so we do have to be careful of not ourselves decking out. We do have Cyllene and Yelchir, so it's very uncommon for us to deck out as well as 3 Pal Pads, but we have to be, just don't be super aggressive with your resources. You have to play a little carefully, but there's not a whole lot Mew can do. Like if you manage to outrun all their Gust cards, they pretty much just pick up their cards and move on to game 2. They can't really do anything. So yeah, this matchup is just pretty easy. Shadow Red Calyrex for the win. On to another relatively easy matchup, and that's Goodra. And Goodra, as current lists are built, doesn't really have a great way to deal with Miltank Pot Helmet. Most lists are not playing Vacuum, not playing Clara. So if we just slap a Miltank down with a Pot Helmet, like the top 8 list from UIC was just playing a Cramorant, and that's not going to be one-shotting. We can pick up our Miltank with Penny, and as soon as we knock out that Cramorant, the game is over. I mean, they can Radiant Greninja for like 90, but that's super inefficient when we just have Penny that can pick it up. So I think as long as you don't have a horrible prizes where your Pot Helmet's prize, your Miltank's prize, and you have no way to fish them out fast enough, you should just win this game most of the time, as long as and if they're playing Clara and Pot Helmet, I think you just kind of tip your cap and move on. But we just dominate this matchup as long as we can set up. And now on to probably our weirdest matchup, and that's specifically the Arceus Vulpix list that won UIC. And this matchup is just very weird because we can't really go with Mimikyu Loop because they have Vulpix and Duraludon to break through it. We can't go with Miltank because of the same reasons. So we sort of have to just throw the kitchen sink at them. If they can drop a choice ball and one shot the Ursaluna with Duraludon, we start to really feel the pressure. So what I'm going to be trying to do in this matchup is use Ralts with Memory Skip to force them to have switching cards, which is sort of awkward because they're playing Lost Cities, and we want to have our Ralts down to draw cards. So I think maybe the way to go would be dropping one Ralts into the discard pile and then using Ditto to copy it and trying to recycle it later with a Team Yelchir to have most mileage out of that one specific card. And then also having Regieleki to retrieve Crushing Hammer and Flannery over again to get rid of their energies to try to slow them down that way, and then pivoting into an Ursaluna or Crabominable later into the game after you've exhausted a lot of their resources. But it's really scuffed. I just think that they have too many resources for us, and that even things go super optimally, it's still going to be very hard for us to win. Luckily, I think that Arceus counterbox deck was pretty much like most counterbox deck, which is the perfect pick for the meta, and now that's sort of a known quantity. It'll be tough for it to break through and have another strong performance, but it's still going to be on a lot of people's radars because it just won one of the biggest tournaments. So it's probably this deck's worst matchup. So I just if you're expecting a lot of Arceus toolbox in your area or at a regionals, you probably would not want to pick up Control. It's definitely a matchup I need to test more because it's just a pretty scuffed matchup, but yeah, we just kind of just have to hope for the best and just like use Crushing Hammers and Ralts and just sort of hope that that works. And finally, we have Lost Zone Box. This is definitely one of our easiest matchups. It's a bit complicated, and one matchup you definitely could be playing wrong. The key for this matchup is not benching Kirlia. I know that sounds pretty crazy because Kirlia is our main draw engine. It's how we're going to be going a lot of times. It's going to be a huge liability. It's very easy prizes for their Cramorant, their Sableye, their Radiant Greninja. So we have to just live life with Rotom. We can Regieleki over and over again to spam Colresses. And then our end game is just going to be using looping that Mimikyu over and over again. Jealous Eyes can oftentimes just take all 6 of our prizes. So as long as we can get through the deck, I guess one card I forgot to put on the graphic here is Roxanne, because like if we take 3 prizes with Jealous Eyes, they can Roxanne and potentially break our Mimikyu loop. But really most of the time, if we can get to the bottom of the deck, have all our pennies and things like that, they really can't do anything. Like, as current lists stand, we also do have Ursaluna, which can buy us time in the early game. It cannot be one-shot by a Dragonite V, and Crabominable can be a proactive mill, like if they're not playing Dragonite, or they lost in their Dragonite for some reason, and they're not playing Radiant Charizard. Crabominable is very tough for them to get through, or if they just leave themselves with 2 cards in deck or 4 cards in deck where we can just deck them out extremely quickly. Crabominable, it definitely just applies pressure on the deck. So I think this is probably one of our deck's easiest matchups, and it's one of the big appeals to the deck because it has a very convincing win against Lost Zone Box. If Lost Zone Box relatively heavier Roxanne, Echoing Horn definitely might be a bit more challenging for us. We just have to be careful when we go for that Mimikyu lock late into the game. We don't have any Pokemon on our bench that can our opponent can go Rogue Boss and just wreck all our hopes and dreams. But yeah, this is all I have for you guys today. I hope that this helps you, and if you have any further questions, I'll leave them in the comment section below. I will leave my current list as well in the description. I'm still trying to work through and try to figure out how to upload daily again with this new TCG Live stuff, but I'm hopefully getting there very soon. Thank you guys for all the support. Subscribe if you're new and you like this kind of content, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And this is Mon, I'll catch you in the next one.